"Go cry home to mommy," Jake Morrison sneered as 12-year-old Dylan Martinez wiped blood from his split lip behind the school gymnasium. The crowd of 8th graders laughed cruelly, phones already recording. "Oh, wait, mommy's too busy playing soldier to care about her crybaby son." But as Dylan reached for his emergency phone with trembling fingers, the autumn sky above Riverside Middle School suddenly filled with the thunderous roar of rotor blades. A military Black Hawk helicopter descended toward the school parking lot, and every phone camera turned skyward in stunned silence. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Captain Rebecca Storm Martinez, 34 years old, was the most decorated female helicopter pilot in the 82nd Airborne Division. She had earned her callsign Storm not just for her ability to fly through impossible weather conditions, but for the way she arrived like a force of nature whenever her fellow soldiers needed extraction from hostile territory. In 12 years of military service, she had completed over 200 combat missions across 4 different theaters of operation, saved countless lives, and never once failed to bring her people home safely. But today, October 15th, was supposed to be different. Today was Dylan's school championship soccer match, the one game that would determine if his team made it to regionals. For the first time in 3 years of military deployments, Rebecca had promised her son she would be there in the bleachers, cheering him on like all the other parents. She had requested leave 6 months in advance, arranged for substitute pilots, and even bought a new civilian outfit specifically for the occasion. Dylan had told everyone at school for weeks that his mom was finally coming to watch him play. The 12-year-old had endured 3 years of his mother's absences with remarkable resilience. While other kids had both parents at school events, Dylan learned to cheer for himself at spelling bees, science fairs, and soccer games. He kept a photo of his mother in full flight gear tucked inside his math textbook, showing it proudly to anyone who asked about his family. "My mom flies helicopters and saves people," he would say, with fierce pride, even as his voice sometimes cracked with loneliness. Rebecca had prepared for this day with the same military precision she brought to every mission. Her dress uniform was cleaned and pressed, hanging in protective plastic beside civilian clothes she rarely wore. She had studied Dylan's team roster, memorized the names of his teammates, and even learned the basic rules of soccer to better understand what she was watching. The night before the game, she had called Dylan 3 times just to hear his excitement about finally having his mother in the audience. "Everyone's going to see you there, Mom," Dylan had whispered into the phone, his voice filled with hope and anticipation. "Jake Morrison's been saying stuff about you not caring because you're never around, but tomorrow he'll see that you're the coolest mom in the whole school." Rebecca's heart had clenched with both pride and guilt. Pride in her son's unwavering loyalty, and guilt over the countless events she had missed due to military obligations. But at 0400 hours on game day morning, Rebecca's secure radio crackled with an emergency alert that shattered her carefully laid plans. Hurricane Elena had unexpectedly shifted course during the night, devastating a coastal research station on Barrier Island. 47 civilian scientists and their families were trapped in flooding buildings with no way to evacuate. The storm surge had destroyed their boats, the roads were completely underwater, and Rebecca's specialized high-altitude rescue helicopter was the only aircraft capable of flying through the hurricane's outer bands to reach them. Rebecca stared at Dylan's school calendar taped to her bathroom mirror, his soccer game circled in red marker with "Mom will be there" written in his careful 12-year-old handwriting. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, feeling the weight of impossible choice settling on her shoulders like armor that no longer fit properly. 47 lives hung in the balance, including 8 children younger than Dylan, but breaking her promise would devastate the one person who mattered most to her in the entire world. She picked up her phone to call Dylan, then set it down again 3 times. How do you explain to a 12-year-old that other people's children need his mother more than he does? How do you ask a boy who has already sacrificed so much for his mother's military career to sacrifice just a little bit more? Rebecca had faced enemy fire, mechanical failures, and impossible weather conditions, but nothing had ever felt as difficult as choosing between her duty as a soldier and her promise as a mother. The research station's distress beacon continued broadcasting every 30 seconds, each pulse a reminder that time was running out for the trapped families. Rebecca closed her eyes and made the choice that had defined her entire military career. She would answer the call for help, no matter the personal cost. She kissed Dylan's school photo gently before tucking it into her flight suit pocket, whispering an apology that felt inadequate for the magnitude of her broken promise. Meanwhile, at Riverside Middle School, Dylan was already in his soccer uniform, checking his phone every few minutes for a good luck text from his mother that would never arrive. Rebecca's hands trembled as she held the emergency briefing packet, rain from the pre-dawn storm pelting against the hangar windows. Colonel James Harrison stood before her with grim determination, his weathered face reflecting the weight of command decisions that destroyed personal plans without hesitation. Captain Martinez, Hurricane Elena made an unexpected Category 4 turn at 0300 hours. Harrison's voice cut through the howling wind outside. Barrier Island Research Station is completely cut off. 47 civilians, including 8 children under the age of 10, are trapped in flooding buildings. Storm surge is rising by the hour, and we're looking at complete submersion within 6 hours. Rebecca's throat went dry as she scanned the mission parameters: high-altitude extraction through hurricane conditions, multiple trips required due to aircraft weight limitations, estimated mission duration 8 to 12 hours minimum. She looked at her watch, 0430 hours. Dylan's championship game started at 1400 hours, 2 hours p.m. "Ma'am, there's more," Harrison continued, his tone growing even more serious. 3 other pilots have already been grounded due to medical issues or equipment failures. Lieutenant Rodriguez is down with severe food poisoning. Captain Thompson's aircraft developed critical rotor problems during pre-flight inspection. Major Williams was injured in a training accident yesterday and is still in the base hospital. The colonel's eyes met hers directly. "Captain, you're the only qualified pilot available with the specialized high-altitude rescue certification needed to fly through these storm conditions. Your bird is the only aircraft equipped with the dual winch system necessary for this type of extraction operation." Rebecca stared at the mission folder, feeling the weight of 47 lives pressing down on her shoulders. Through the hangar's rain-streaked windows, she could see her Black Hawk helicopter being prepped by the maintenance crew, its rotors already being checked and double-checked for hurricane force wind resistance. Emergency medical supplies were being loaded into the cargo bay, along with specialized rescue equipment that could mean the difference between life and death for the trapped families. "Colonel," Rebecca's voice caught slightly, "today is my son's championship soccer game. It's the first school event I've been able to attend in 3 years. I gave him my word that I would be there." She pulled out her phone, showing Harrison the dozens of excited text messages Dylan had sent over the past week, each one counting down the days until his mother would finally be in the bleachers. Harrison's expression softened for just a moment, revealing the father beneath the commanding officer. "Captain, I have 3 kids of my own. I understand what this costs you personally, but those families on Barrier Island, they have children too. 8 kids who won't see another birthday if we don't extract them before the storm surge peaks. Rebecca closed her eyes, seeing Dylan's face from their video call the night before. His excitement had been infectious as he explained every detail of the game plan, how he was playing center forward for the first time, how he had been practicing his penalty kicks for weeks. All the other kids' parents will be there, Mom. Even Jake Morrison's dad is flying in from his business trip just to watch. I can't wait for everyone to finally meet you. Captain, Harrison continued gently but firmly, I know this is an impossible choice, but these people called for help because they believe in what we do. They believe that when everything goes wrong, someone will come for them. Today, you're that someone. The emergency radio crackled with an update from the Coast Guard. Weather conditions deteriorating rapidly. Window for helicopter extraction closing fast. We need that bird in the air within the hour, or those people are gone. Rebecca's phone buzzed with a good morning text from Dylan. Today's the day, Mom. Game starts at 2 p.m. I'll be looking for you in the bleachers. Love you. A photo followed. Dylan, in his soccer uniform, holding up a homemade sign that read, My mom is a hero, with a crude drawing of a helicopter. She stared at that photo for 30 seconds, memorizing every detail of her son's proud smile, before slowly closing the phone and looking up at Colonel Harrison. How many extraction runs will be required? Minimum 4 trips, Captain. The storm windows are narrow, and we can only take 12 people maximum per run due to weight restrictions in these wind conditions. Rebecca nodded slowly, the soldier in her taking over from the mother. I'll need the detailed weather reports, updated every 30 minutes. And Colonel, I need you to personally ensure that someone calls my son's school. Dylan is 12 years old, playing in the championship game today. He needs to know that his mother didn't abandon him by choice. Consider it done, Captain. Rebecca picked up her flight helmet, running her fingers over the small photo of Dylan taped inside the visor, a ritual she performed before every dangerous mission. She kissed her fingertips and pressed them against his smiling face in the picture. 47 people, she whispered to herself, including 8 children. She turned toward her waiting helicopter, leaving her civilian clothes hanging unworn in the locker, and walked into the storm that would keep her from the most important promise she had ever made. Dylan Martinez sat in the school locker room at 11:30 a.m., methodically adjusting his shin guards for the 4th time, while his teammates buzzed with pre-game excitement around him. Coach Peterson had dismissed them early from classes so they could prepare mentally for the biggest game of their middle school careers. Dylan kept checking his phone, expecting the usual flood of good luck messages from his mother, but the screen remained frustratingly blank. Dude, you're gonna wear out that phone screen, laughed his teammate Carlos Rivera, pulling on his cleats nearby. My dad's already here setting up his camping chair in the front row. Says he's been looking forward to finally meeting your mysterious helicopter. Mom. Dylan forced a smile, tucking his phone back into his equipment bag. She'll be here. Mom never breaks her promises. But even as he said the words, a familiar knot of anxiety was forming in his stomach, the same feeling he'd experienced countless times over the past 3 years when last-minute military emergencies had pulled his mother away from school events. In the school parking lot, parents were already arriving in droves, setting up elaborate tailgating displays and claiming the best spots along the sidelines. Dylan watched through the small locker room window as Jake Morrison's father pulled up in a gleaming SUV, immediately beginning to unload professional camera equipment and a personalized banner that read, Morrison Family Soccer Supporters. Other families were setting up folding chairs, coolers filled with snacks, and signs supporting their young athletes. Mrs. Patricia Hendricks, the school secretary, appeared in the locker room doorway with a clipboard and an uncomfortable expression. Dylan Martinez? could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Dylan's heart sank immediately. He had received enough of these awkward, sympathetic conversations over the years to recognize the tone. Coach Peterson nodded grimly, understanding the situation without explanation. "Take your time, son. We'll handle warm-ups when you're ready." In the quiet hallway outside the locker room, Mrs. Hendricks knelt down to Dylan's eye level, her voice gentle but professional. "Dylan, I received a call from Fort Braxton this morning. Your mother has been deployed on an emergency rescue mission. She wanted you to know that she's thinking of you, but she won't be able to make it to the game today." The words hit Dylan like a physical blow, even though part of him had been preparing for this disappointment all morning. He bit his lip hard, the same way his mother had taught him to do when controlling emotions in difficult situations. "Did they say when she'd be back?" "The mission duration is uncertain, sweetheart, but she specifically asked me to tell you that she's incredibly proud of you and that she'll want to hear every detail about the game when she gets home." Dylan nodded stiffly, his 12-year-old mind already shifting into the emotional survival mode he had perfected over years of military family life. "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Hendricks. I should get back to my team now." As he walked back toward the locker room, Dylan could already hear the whispered conversations starting among the other parents in the hallway. "Poor kid, his mother's never around. I heard she missed his birthday party last month too. Some people shouldn't have children if their careers are more important than family." Jake Morrison was waiting outside the locker room with his usual cruel smile. "Let me guess, Mommy got called away to play soldier again? What a surprise." His voice carried just loud enough for the other players to hear. "Maybe you should just tell people your mom doesn't exist. Would be less embarrassing than admitting she cares more about strangers than her own son." "Shut up, Jake," Dylan muttered, trying to push past him. "Oh, what are you gonna do? Cry home to Mommy?" Jake's voice rose mockingly. "Oh, wait, I forgot. She's too busy saving the world to care about some stupid soccer game. Face it, Martinez, your mom's never gonna show up for anything that matters." Dylan's fists clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to walk away. His mother had taught him that fighting solved nothing, and that real strength came from controlling yourself when others tried to provoke you. But Jake's words cut deeper than usual because they echoed the doubts Dylan carried in his own heart. In the stands, parents continued arriving and setting up their elaborate displays of support. Dylan could see Mr. Rivera adjusting a professional video camera to capture every moment of Carlos's performance. The Henderson family had brought a homemade banner spanning 10 feet, complete with glitter and their daughter's jersey number. Even the usually absent Dr. Williams had taken time off from his medical practice to watch his son play defense. Dylan sat on the bench during warm-ups, watching all the other players wave enthusiastically to their parents in the stands. He pulled out his phone one more time, hoping against hope for a message from his mother, but found only a text from his grandmother in Texas. "Good luck today, mijo. Wish I could be there to cheer you on." Coach Peterson approached Dylan during stretching exercises, his weathered face showing genuine concern. "Son, I know today's disappointing, but I want you to know that your mother's absence doesn't diminish what she means to you, or what you mean to this team. Sometimes the people we love most have to make impossible choices." "I know, Coach," Dylan replied quietly, but his voice lacked conviction. "I just thought this time would be different." The crowd in the stands was growing larger and more enthusiastic. Dylan could hear parents calling out encouragement, setting up elaborate snack stations and organizing group cheers for the home team. The Morrison family had even hired a photographer to document Jake's championship moment, complete with professional lighting equipment. As game time approached, Dylan found himself scanning the parking lot obsessively, hoping to see his mother's familiar figure running towards the field. He had memorized the sound of her footsteps, the way she called his name when she was proud of him, and the fierce hug she gave him after every achievement, no matter how small. But the parking lot remained empty of Blackhawks, or women in military uniforms, and Dylan began the painful process of accepting that he would face the most important game of his young life, without the one person whose opinion mattered most to him. The referee's whistle was about to blow, and Dylan Martinez was completely alone. The championship game began at exactly 2:00 p.m. under a gray October sky that seemed to mirror Dylan's mood. He took his position as center forward, scanning the packed bleachers one final time for any sign of his mother's familiar face. The crowd was a sea of enthusiastic parents, grandparents, and siblings, all cheering loudly for their young athletes. Dylan's section of the stands remained conspicuously empty. This absence felt different from all the others. When Rebecca had missed Dylan's 10th birthday party due to a training exercise, he had understood. When she couldn't attend his science fair because of a deployment to Afghanistan, he had been disappointed but proud. Even when she missed his school's honor ceremony last spring, Dylan had defended her choice to his classmates. But today was supposed to be the day everything changed, the day his mother finally showed up like all the other parents. Dylan had spent weeks preparing not just for the game itself, but for the moment when he could finally introduce his teammates to the woman he talked about constantly. He had planned exactly what he would say. "Guys, this is my mom, Captain Rebecca Martinez. She's a helicopter pilot who saves people's lives." He had imagined her watching from the sidelines in her civilian clothes, cheering louder than any other parent, making up for 3 years of missed moments with one perfect afternoon. The first 20 minutes of the game passed in a blur of aggressive play and missed opportunities. Dylan found himself distracted, constantly glancing toward the parking lot entrance whenever play stopped. His teammates began to notice his lack of focus. During a water break, Carlos Rivera pulled him aside with genuine concern. "Dude, what's going on? You're playing like your mind's somewhere else entirely. This is the championship. We need you locked in." "My mom was supposed to be here," Dylan admitted quietly, watching Jake Morrison's father capture every moment of the game with professional camera equipment. "She promised she'd finally come to one of my games. I told everyone she'd be here." Carlos nodded understandingly. His own father had never missed a single sporting event, arriving early to claim the best viewing spots and staying late to discuss every play in detail. Maybe she got delayed? Military stuff happens fast, right? Before Dylan could respond, Jake Morrison jogged over with his trademark smirk. "Still looking for Mommy Dearest Martinez. Face it, she's probably in some desert somewhere, pretending to be important while missing the most important day of your pathetic life." "She's on a rescue mission," Dylan said firmly, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. "People's lives are in danger." "Right," Jake laughed mockingly. "That's what she always says, isn't it? Sorry, son, strangers need me more than you do." "When are you going to realize she just doesn't want to be here? My dad flew back from Singapore specifically for this game. Real parents make their kids the priority." Dylan's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to walk away. His mother had taught him that violence never solved problems, and that real strength came from emotional control under pressure. But Jake's words stung because they voiced the doubts Dylan had been carrying for months. Was his mother really saving lives, or was she simply choosing her career over her family? In the stands, the other parents had organized themselves into an enthusiastic cheering section. Mrs. Rivera had brought homemade team cookies for everyone. Mr. Henderson was leading organized chants between plays. Even the typically reserved Dr. Patterson had painted his face in school colors and was waving a foam finger with surprising enthusiasm. Dylan's empty section seemed to grow more obvious with each passing minute. During halftime, with the score tied 1-1, Dylan sat alone on the bench while his teammates gathered around their parents for snacks and encouragement. He watched Jake Morrison pose for professional photographs with his father, both of them grinning widely as they celebrated Jake's first half goal. The photographer was capturing every angle, ensuring that this championship moment would be preserved forever in glossy detail. Coach Peterson approached Dylan with a sports drink and a gentle expression. "You're playing with heart, son, but I can see you're distracted. Want to talk about it?" "Coach, do you think some parents just care more about their jobs than their kids?" Dylan's question came out more vulnerably than he intended. The older man sat down beside Dylan, choosing his words carefully. "I've been coaching for 15 years, and I've seen all kinds of families. Some parents show up to every game but never really see their kids. Others miss every event but raise children who know they're loved unconditionally. Your mother talks about you constantly when she drops you off at practice. She knows your stats better than most parents who never miss a game." "But she's never here when it matters," Dylan said quietly. "Jake's right. She always has something more important to do." Coach Peterson was quiet for a moment, watching the parents in the stands organize snacks and discuss strategy. "Dylan, your mother flies helicopters into dangerous situations to save people's lives. That's not a normal job. It's a calling. The same qualities that make her willing to risk everything for strangers are the qualities that made her raise a son with your character." The second half began with Dylan still struggling to focus. Every few minutes he found himself scanning the parking lot for any sign of military vehicles. His teammates were starting to compensate for his distraction, with Carlos taking over more of the offensive plays and the defense working harder to cover Dylan's missed assignments. As the game entered its final 10 minutes, still tied 1-1, Dylan realized that his mother wasn't coming. There would be no dramatic last-minute arrival, no proud parent cheering from the sidelines, no post-game celebration photos to send to his grandmother in Texas. He was going to face the biggest moment of his athletic career completely alone, surrounded by teammates whose parents documented every significant play. The referee checked his watch. 10 minutes left in the championship game, and Dylan Martinez had never felt more abandoned in his 12 years of life. With 5 minutes remaining in the championship game, and the score still deadlocked at 1-1, Dylan Martinez found himself in the perfect position to score the winning goal. The opposing team's defense had shifted left, leaving a clear path to the goal that any experienced center forward would exploit without hesitation. But as Dylan received the pass from Carlos, his eyes instinctively swept the sidelines one more time, searching for the one face that would never appear. In that moment of distraction, the opposing goalkeeper read Dylan's hesitation and charged forward, easily stripping the ball away and clearing it downfield. The crowd groaned collectively, and Dylan heard Jake Morrison's voice cut through the disappointed murmurs. "Nice job, Martinez. Guess you're too busy looking for mommy to actually play soccer." Coach Peterson called timeout immediately, gathering his team in a tight circle near the sideline. His weathered face showed the strain of watching his star player crumble under emotional pressure during the most important game of the season. The other players looked confused and frustrated. They had worked all year for this moment, and their leading scorer seemed to have mentally checked out. "Listen up, gentlemen," Coach Peterson said firmly. "We have 4 minutes left to win a championship. Whatever's happening off the field needs to stay off the field. Dylan, I need you present and focused, or I'm putting Tommy in your position." Dylan nodded mechanically, but his teammates could see that his heart wasn't in the game anymore. Carlos Rivera, who had been Dylan's best friend since elementary school, grabbed his jersey and pulled him aside, while the other players hydrated and strategized. Bro, I know you're hurt about your mom not showing up, but we need you right now. This team has been working toward this moment all season long. Don't let Jake Morrison and his stupid comments ruin everything we've built together. You don't understand, Dylan whispered, his voice cracking with 12-year-old emotion. I told everyone she was coming. I bragged about finally having my mom here like everyone else. Now I just look like an idiot whose mother doesn't care enough to show up. In the stands, the atmosphere had become increasingly uncomfortable as other parents began to notice Dylan's obvious distress. Whispered conversations spread through the bleachers like wildfire. That's the boy whose mother's in the military. I heard she's never been to a single game. Poor kid, he keeps looking around like she might still show up. Mrs. Jennifer Patterson, a school board member whose daughter played on the girls' soccer team, leaned over to her husband with barely concealed disapproval. It's really quite selfish when you think about it. That woman chose to have a child, and now she consistently prioritizes her career over her son's emotional needs. Look at him out there. He's clearly devastated. Mr. Patterson, a veteran himself, shifted uncomfortably. Jen, you don't know what kind of mission she's on. Military personnel don't get to choose when emergencies happen. Oh, please, Mrs. Patterson replied dismissively. There's always someone else who could handle these so-called emergencies. She's choosing to be absent from her child's life, and that boy is paying the price. Some women just aren't cut out to be mothers if they can't prioritize their children's needs. The conversation was overheard by several other parents, sparking a wave of similar discussions throughout the stands. Dylan's situation became the unofficial halftime entertainment, with parents debating the ethics of military service versus parental responsibility, while the boy in question struggled to hold himself together on the field. Jake Morrison's father, a successful real estate developer who made a point of attending every school event, voiced his opinion loudly enough for nearby parents to hear. I rearranged 3 major business meetings to be here today. That's what real parents do. They make sacrifices for their children. This woman is clearly putting her own ambitions ahead of her son's emotional well-being. As play resumed, Dylan's performance continued to deteriorate. He missed 2 more scoring opportunities, failed to communicate effectively with his teammates, and seemed to be playing in a fog of disappointment and embarrassment. The other players began to lose confidence in their star center forward, with Carlos and Tommy taking over most of the offensive responsibilities. With 2 minutes left on the clock, Riverside Middle School finally scored the go-ahead goal. But it came from Tommy Henderson, not Dylan. As Tommy celebrated with his teammates and parents cheered wildly from the stands, Dylan found himself standing alone near midfield, watching everyone else experience the joy and triumph he had dreamed about for months. The irony wasn't lost on him. His team was winning the championship, but he felt more defeated than ever. All around him, his teammates were playing with inspired energy, knowing their families were watching and documenting every moment. Dylan couldn't shake the feeling that he was performing for an empty audience, that his achievements meant nothing without his mother there to witness them. In the final minute of play, as Riverside defended their 2-1 lead, Dylan caught sight of Jake Morrison celebrating prematurely near the opposing goal. Jake noticed Dylan's dejected expression and jogged over during a brief stoppage in play. "Hey, Martinez," Jake called out with mock sympathy. "Maybe if you cry hard enough, your mom will magically appear." Oh, wait, she's probably too busy playing soldier to notice her son falling apart on live television. For the first time all day, Dylan didn't walk away from Jake's taunts. Instead, he stood frozen in place, tears finally beginning to form in his eyes as 3 years of accumulated disappointment and abandonment came crashing down all at once. The championship game that was supposed to be his moment of triumph had become his most public humiliation. The referee's whistle echoed across the field, and Dylan realized with crushing finality that his mother would never see him play soccer again. Middle school athletics were ending, and Rebecca Martinez had missed every single significant moment of her son's athletic career. As his teammates began their victory celebration, Dylan Martinez stood alone at center field, surrounded by joy he couldn't feel and success that tasted like failure. As the final whistle blew and Riverside Middle School claimed their 2-1 championship victory, Dylan's teammates erupted in celebration around him, but he felt completely disconnected from their joy. The other players were already running toward the stands to embrace their families, their faces glowing with triumph and relief. Dylan remained at center field, watching the scene unfold like he was viewing it through glass, present but not really part of the moment he had dreamed about for months. Jake Morrison made a show of running directly to his father's elaborate camera setup, posing for what would undoubtedly become a professionally framed championship portrait. Other teammates were being lifted onto their parents' shoulders, receiving congratulatory hugs, and posing for countless cell phone pictures that would fill social media feeds for weeks to come. Dylan slowly walked toward the team bench, his cleats dragging against the grass with each step. That's when Coach Peterson's phone rang. The older man answered with his usual gruff efficiency, but his expression quickly shifted from post-game exhaustion to intense concentration. "This is Coach Peterson. Yes, I understand. Fort Braxton, you said. Hold on just one moment." He looked across the celebrating field and called out firmly, "Dylan Martinez, come here, son." Dylan approached reluctantly, assuming he was about to receive another sympathetic speech about dealing with disappointment. Coach Peterson held up his phone with an expression Dylan had never seen before, a mixture of urgency and something that looked almost like excitement. "Dylan, I have Sergeant First Class Michael Torres on the line from Fort Braxton. He says it's about your mother's current mission status, and he specifically asked to speak with you." Dylan's heart immediately began racing. In 3 years of military family life, he had learned that unexpected phone calls from the base usually meant one of two things, either very good news or very bad news. There was rarely anything in between. He took the phone with trembling hands, acutely aware that his celebrating teammates and their families were continuing their post-game festivities just a few yards away. "Hello, this is Dylan Martinez." "Dylan, this is Sergeant Torres. I served with your mother in Afghanistan 2 years ago. She saved my life during a helicopter crash, and I've never forgotten that debt. I'm calling because I just received word about her current rescue mission." Dylan's mouth went completely dry. Is my mom okay?" "Son, your mother is more than okay. She's currently in the middle of the most heroic rescue operation I've witnessed in 15 years of military service. Hurricane Elena trapped 47 civilians on Barrier Island, including 8 children younger than you. Your mom has been flying through Category 4 hurricane conditions for the past 8 hours, making multiple extraction runs in weather that would ground most pilots permanently. Dylan sank onto the team bench, trying to process this information, while around him the championship celebration continued in full swing. Parents were setting up group photos, players were signing soccer balls, and the school photographer was documenting every moment of triumph for the yearbook and local newspaper. Sergeant Torres continued, his voice filled with unmistakable admiration. "Dylan, I need you to understand something. What your mother is doing right now, flying a helicopter through hurricane-force winds to save complete strangers, that's not normal military duty. That's the kind of courage that gets written about in history books. She volunteered for this mission when 3 other pilots were grounded or injured." "But why couldn't someone else do it?" Dylan asked quietly, his 12-year-old mind still struggling to balance pride with disappointment. "Why does it always have to be my mom?" Because, son, your mother has a specialized certification that only 12 pilots in the entire United States military possess. She's qualified for high-altitude hurricane rescue operations, which means she's literally the only person available who could save these people. Without her, 47 civilians would die tonight, including those 8 children. Dylan watched his teammates posing for victory photos with their families, their faces radiant with shared joy and accomplishment. Carlos Rivera was being interviewed by a local sports reporter while his parents beamed with pride in the background. Tommy Henderson was signing autographs for younger students who had come to watch the championship game. "Sergeant Torres," Dylan said slowly, "my mom promised she'd be at my soccer game today. It was supposed to be the first time she ever watched me play. Everyone else's parents are here, and I feel like she chose strangers over me." There was a long pause on the line before Torres responded, and when he did, his voice carried a weight that Dylan was only beginning to understand. "Dylan, let me tell you about the 8 children your mother is currently saving. There's a 6-year-old girl named Emma who's trapped in a research station with her marine biologist parents. There's twin boys, age 9, whose father studies coastal erosion. There's a 10-year-old boy named Marcus, whose mother researches hurricane patterns." Torres paused, letting the reality sink in. "Son, your mother looked at those trapped children and saw you. She saw 8 kids who needed to get home safely to play soccer and attend school and argue with their parents about homework. She chose to save them not instead of loving you, but because she loves you so much that she can't let other children suffer when she has the power to help them." Dylan felt tears beginning to form, but for the first time all day, they weren't tears of abandonment or self-pity. Around him, the celebration was reaching its peak as parents organized group photos and players traded contact information, promising to stay in touch through high school. But Dylan was beginning to understand something much more significant than championship victories. "There's something else, Dylan," Sergeant Torres continued. "Your mother specifically asked me to call you during your game. She wanted you to know that even though she can't be there physically, she's carrying a photo of you in her flight helmet. Every time she pulls another person from that flooding research station, she looks at your picture and remembers why she became a soldier in the first place." Dylan looked up at the gray October sky, wondering if somewhere above the clouds his mother was fighting through hurricane winds to bring families home safely. For the first time since the disappointing phone call that morning, he felt something other than abandonment. He felt the beginning of pride. 23 minutes after Dylan's conversation with Sergeant Torres, while the championship celebration was still in full swing around him, Major General Patricia Hammond was reviewing the emergency roster in her command center at Fort Braxton. Rebecca Martinez had successfully completed 3 hurricane rescue runs, extracting 36 of the 47 trapped civilians, but weather conditions were deteriorating rapidly. The remaining 11 people, including 6 children, were in the most dangerous section of the flooding research station. General Communications Specialist Rachel Wong announced from her station, "Captain Martinez is reporting severe mechanical stress on her aircraft. She's requesting permission for one final extraction run, but our meteorology team is advising immediate mission abort due to wind shear approaching critical levels." General Hammond studied the weather data with growing concern. Hurricane Elena was intensifying beyond all predictions, with sustained winds now exceeding 140 miles per hour. Any reasonable commander would order an immediate withdrawal, accepting the loss of 11 lives to prevent risking the pilot and aircraft. But Rebecca Martinez wasn't requesting withdrawal. She was requesting permission to fly directly into the storm's eye wall for one last rescue attempt. "General," came Rebecca's voice over the radio, crackling with static and wind interference, "I can get them out. All 11 civilians are now consolidated in the research station's main building. It's risky, but it's doable. I just need clearance for one more run. Captain Martinez, General Hammond responded firmly, you've been flying combat rescue operations for 9 consecutive hours in hurricane conditions. Your aircraft is showing stress indicators across multiple systems. I'm ordering you to return to base immediately. There was a long pause, filled only with the sound of rotor blades fighting against impossible wind conditions. When Rebecca's voice returned, it carried a tone that General Hammond had heard before, the voice of a soldier who had made an irreversible decision based on principle rather than protocol. General, with all due respect, there are 6 children in that building. The youngest is 4 years old. If I leave now, they won't survive the next storm surge. I can't live with that choice, and I don't think the United States military should be able to live with it either. General Hammond closed her eyes, recognizing the impossible position Rebecca had created. As a commanding officer, she should order an immediate withdrawal. As a human being who had taken an oath to protect civilian lives, she understood Rebecca's moral reasoning. And as someone who had reviewed Rebecca's personnel file, she knew that Captain Martinez had never failed to complete a rescue mission in 12 years of service. Captain, if you attempt this final extraction, you'll be flying solo with no backup support. Weather conditions are beyond our operational parameters. If something goes wrong, we can't send help. Understood, General, but I didn't join the military to abandon children when things get difficult. While this conversation was taking place 40 miles away, Master Sergeant David Kim was finishing his shift in the base communications center when he overheard the emergency radio traffic. Kim had served under Rebecca Martinez during 2 combat deployments in Afghanistan, where she had personally extracted his wounded squad from hostile territory during a Taliban ambush. He owed his life to Rebecca's willingness to fly into impossible situations. Kim immediately began making phone calls to other veterans of Rebecca's unit, men and women scattered across the southeastern United States, who had served under her command over the past decade. Within minutes, he had contacted 8 former squad members, all of whom shared the same debt of gratitude to Captain Rebecca Martinez. Listen up, everyone, Kim announced during a hastily arranged conference call. Storm is out there, right now, flying through a Category 4 hurricane to save civilians. She's been at it for 9 hours straight, and she's about to attempt one final rescue run that could kill her. Meanwhile, her 12-year-old son just played in a championship soccer game that she promised to attend but couldn't because of this mission. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, now stationed in North Carolina, immediately understood the implications. Kim, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Santos, Captain Martinez pulled you out of that burning Humvee in Kandahar province. She carried you 2 miles to the extraction point with a dislocated shoulder and never once complained about the pain. Now her kid is probably feeling abandoned and angry because he doesn't understand why his mom chose strangers over his soccer game. Technical Sergeant James Wright, currently on leave in Virginia, joined the conversation with growing excitement. I know exactly where Riverside Middle School is. It's only 40 minutes from my current location. If we can get there before the crowd disperses, we might be able to help that kid understand what kind of mother he has. The idea spread quickly among the veterans, each of whom carried vivid memories of moments when Rebecca Martinez had risked everything to bring them home alive. Staff Sergeant Linda Rodriguez remembered Rebecca flying through enemy anti-aircraft fire to evacuate wounded soldiers. Corporal Anthony Thompson recalled Rebecca spending 18 hours in a combat zone, refusing to leave until every injured person was safely extracted. Here's what we're going to do, Kim announced with military precision. Everyone who can physically get to Riverside Middle School within the next hour needs to drop whatever they're doing and drive there immediately. We're going to find Dylan Martinez and explain to him, and to everyone else at that school, exactly what his mother is doing right now and why it matters. Within 15 minutes, 8 veterans of Rebecca Martinez's unit were driving toward Riverside Middle School from various locations across the region. Most were still in their work clothes. Kim was coming directly from his shift at Fort Braxton. Santos was leaving her job at a Veterans Outreach Center. Wright was abandoning a family barbecue to make the drive. But each of them carried the same urgent mission: to ensure that Rebecca Martinez's son understood that his mother's absence wasn't abandonment. It was the highest form of love and service they had ever witnessed. As they converged on the middle school, where parents and students were still celebrating the championship victory, none of them knew that Rebecca was currently flying through the eye wall of Hurricane Elena, attempting the most dangerous rescue mission of her career to save 11 strangers, including 6 children she would never meet, but couldn't bear to leave behind. Dylan Martinez was about to learn that sometimes love arrives in unexpected forms, carried by people who understand the true cost of heroism. At 3:47 p.m., exactly 43 minutes after the championship game had ended, 8 military vehicles began arriving in the Riverside Middle School parking lot with synchronized precision. The post-game celebration was still in full swing, with parents packing up elaborate tailgating setups and players trading contact information and posing for final group photos near the soccer field. Dylan was sitting alone on the team bench, still processing his conversation with Sergeant Torres, while watching his teammates enjoy their victory celebration with their families. Coach Peterson had gone to help organize equipment cleanup, leaving Dylan with his thoughts and the growing understanding that his mother's absence represented something far more significant than he had initially comprehended. Master Sergeant David Kim was the first to exit his vehicle, followed rapidly by 7 other veterans in various states of civilian and military dress. Some had driven directly from work and were still in uniform, while others wore hastily thrown together combinations of civilian clothes and military accessories. What they all shared was an unmistakable bearing of purpose and urgency that immediately caught the attention of nearby parents. Kim approached the first adult he encountered, Mrs. Patricia Hendricks, the school secretary who had delivered the disappointing news to Dylan earlier that morning. "Ma'am, we're looking for Dylan Martinez. We understand he's the son of Captain Rebecca Martinez, currently deployed on emergency rescue operations." Mrs. Hendricks looked confused by the sudden appearance of military personnel at a middle school soccer celebration. "Yes, Dylan is over by the team bench. May I ask what this is regarding? His mother is supposed to be on some kind of mission." "Ma'am," Sergeant First Class Maria Santos stepped forward with crisp military courtesy, "Captain Martinez is currently conducting hurricane rescue operations to save 47 trapped civilians. We served under her command in Afghanistan, and we're here to ensure her son understands the magnitude of what his mother is accomplishing right now." The conversation was drawing attention from other parents who began gathering around the group of veterans with curiosity and growing concern. Jake Morrison's father, still carrying his professional camera equipment, approached with the entitled confidence of someone accustomed to being involved in every significant event. "Excuse me, but what exactly is going on here? This is a school function, and we weren't expecting any military presentation or recruitment activity." Technical Sergeant James Wright, a decorated combat veteran with 3 Purple Hearts, looked directly at Morrison's father with barely concealed disdain. "Sir, we're not here for recruitment. We're here to support the son of the finest helicopter pilot we've ever served with. Captain Martinez is currently risking her life to save children trapped in a hurricane, and her son deserves to know that his mother is a genuine hero." Kim gestured toward Dylan, who was now watching the gathering crowd with growing confusion and embarrassment. That 12-year-old boy over there has spent the entire day believing his mother chose her career over his soccer game. What he doesn't know is that his mother is currently flying through Category 4 hurricane winds to save 8 children who would die tonight without her intervention. The crowd of parents fell silent as the implications began to sink in. Mrs. Patterson, who had spent the afternoon criticizing Rebecca's parenting choices, shifted uncomfortably as she realized she had been judging a situation she didn't fully understand. Staff Sergeant Linda Rodriguez stepped forward and addressed the entire group of gathered parents with military precision. "Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Rebecca Martinez has saved every single one of our lives during combat operations overseas. Today, she's saving the lives of complete strangers because that's what genuine heroes do. They sacrifice their personal happiness to protect others, especially children." Corporal Anthony Thompson nodded in agreement, his voice carrying the weight of shared combat experience. Captain Martinez spent 18 hours in a hostile fire zone, refusing to leave until every wounded soldier was evacuated. She's been flying rescue missions for 9 consecutive hours today, and she's about to attempt one final extraction run that could kill her, all to save civilians she's never met. Coach Peterson, who had been organizing equipment nearby, approached the group with growing understanding. "Are you telling me that Dylan's mother is currently in life-threatening danger to save other people's children?" "Coach," Kim replied firmly, "Dylan's mother is attempting hurricane rescue operations that only 12 pilots in the entire United States military are qualified to perform. She volunteered for this mission when other pilots were grounded or injured. Without her, 47 people would die tonight, including 8 children under the age of 10. The mood among the celebrating parents began to shift dramatically. What had started as whispered criticism of Rebecca's parenting priorities was transforming into something approaching awe and shame. Several parents who had spent the afternoon commenting on Rebecca's absence now looked uncomfortable and embarrassed by their earlier judgments. Dylan slowly approached the group, his young face showing confusion mixed with growing pride. Are you talking about my mom?" Santos knelt down to Dylan's eye level, her expression gentle but serious. "Dylan, your mother pulled my broken body out of a burning vehicle in Afghanistan. She carried me to safety while enemy fighters were shooting at us. Today, she's doing the same thing for families trapped by Hurricane Elena." Wright added with visible emotion, "Son, your mother could have chosen a safe desk job years ago. She keeps volunteering for the most dangerous missions because she can't bear the thought of leaving people behind when she has the skills to save them." Kim placed a firm hand on Dylan's shoulder. "Dylan, we drove here from all over the region because we couldn't let you think your mother chose strangers over you. She didn't choose strangers. She saw trapped children and thought of you. She's saving them because she loves you so much that she can't let other kids suffer when she can prevent it." The circle of parents around them had grown to include nearly everyone remaining from the championship celebration. Even Jake Morrison and his father had joined the crowd, listening intently as Dylan learned the truth about his mother's heroic actions. For the first time all day, Dylan Martinez wasn't standing alone. As the circle of parents and veterans grew larger around Dylan, Master Sergeant Kim pulled out his military-issued tablet and connected it to the base communications network. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, accessing real-time mission data that was normally restricted to active personnel only. The surrounding crowd watched in fascination as Kim's expression grew increasingly serious. "Dylan," Kim announced, his voice carrying across the now silent gathering, "I'm receiving live updates from your mother's current mission. She's about to attempt her final extraction run right now. Hurricane Elena has intensified beyond all predictions, and the meteorology team is advising immediate mission abort. Dylan's heart began racing as he processed this information. Around him, parents who had been celebrating just minutes earlier were now completely focused on the unfolding drama. Coach Peterson moved closer to Dylan, placing a protective hand on the boy's shoulder as the military personnel continued their briefing. Technical Sergeant Wright received an incoming call on his secure phone and stepped slightly away from the crowd to answer. His conversation was brief but intense, filled with military terminology that the civilian parents couldn't fully understand. When he returned, his face was pale with concern. "Kim, I just spoke with base operations. Captain Martinez is requesting permission for one final rescue run against direct orders to abort the mission. There are 11 people still trapped, including 6 children. The youngest is 4 years old." Santos looked directly at Dylan, her expression mixing pride with obvious worry. "Dylan, your mother is about to fly directly into the eye wall of a Category 4 hurricane. No pilot has ever attempted this type of extraction in these weather conditions. She could die trying to save these people." The crowd of parents erupted in worried murmurs, with several people pulling out their phones to search for news coverage of Hurricane Elena. Mrs. Patterson, who had criticized Rebecca earlier, looked stricken with guilt and fear. "Oh my God, that woman is risking her life for complete strangers." Jake Morrison's father, still holding his expensive camera equipment, approached Dylan with a completely different demeanor than he had displayed all day. "Son, I owe you an apology. I had no idea your mother was involved in anything this heroic." Dylan nodded silently, his 12-year-old mind struggling to process the magnitude of what his mother was attempting. The soccer championship that had seemed so important just hours earlier now felt trivial compared to the life-and-death drama unfolding 40 miles away. Kim's tablet suddenly came alive with incoming communications from Fort Braxton. The distinctive voice of General Hammond filled the air through the device's speakers, carrying the weight of command authority that made everyone in the gathering instinctively stand straighter. "All units be advised that Captain Martinez is proceeding with unauthorized final extraction attempt, despite weather conditions exceeding operational parameters. This is a solo mission with no backup support available. Repeat, Captain Martinez is flying alone into hurricane conditions to extract 11 trapped civilians." The crowd fell completely silent. Parents who had never experienced military life were beginning to understand the gravity of what Rebecca Martinez was attempting. Several mothers instinctively moved closer to their own children, imagining how they would feel if their family members were trapped and waiting for rescue. Dylan looked up at the gray sky above the soccer field, trying to imagine his mother fighting through hurricane winds somewhere above the clouds. "How will we know if she's okay?" Rodriguez smiled sadly, understanding the helpless feeling that military families experience during dangerous deployments. "Dylan, your mother is the most skilled pilot any of us have ever flown with. If anyone can pull off this rescue, it's her. But I won't lie to you, this is extremely dangerous." Carlos Rivera, who had been hanging back with his own family during the veterans' arrival, finally approached Dylan with genuine concern. "Dude, I had no idea your mom was doing anything this intense. I thought she just had some regular military meeting or training exercise." "None of us knew," Coach Peterson admitted, looking embarrassed by his earlier assumption that Rebecca had simply prioritized work over family. "Dylan, your mother isn't missing your game because it's not important to her. She's saving children's lives because she can't bear the thought of kids your age dying when she has the power to help them." Thompson received another secure communication and shared the update with growing excitement. "Good news, Captain Martinez has successfully located the final group of trapped civilians. All 11 people are alive and consolidated in the main research building. She's beginning her approach for the final extraction. The parents began spontaneously organizing themselves into a support circle around Dylan, with several families offering their phones so he could stay connected to the mission updates. Mrs. Rivera brought Dylan a bottle of water and a sandwich from her post-game supplies, while other parents shared encouraging stories about military families they knew. Mr. Henderson, whose son Tommy had scored the winning goal earlier, approached Dylan with obvious respect. "Son, I want you to know that what your mother is doing right now, that takes a level of courage most of us can't even imagine. You should be incredibly proud." As the crowd waited for updates on Rebecca's final rescue attempt, Dylan found himself surrounded by a community of support he had never expected. Parents who had been strangers just hours earlier were now invested in his mother's mission and his emotional well-being. Kim checked his tablet again and announced the news everyone was waiting for. Captain Martinez has successfully completed her approach through the hurricane eye wall. She's beginning the final extraction of all 11 remaining civilians. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause, with several parents wiping tears from their eyes as they realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Dylan felt a surge of pride unlike anything he had ever experienced, not because his team had won a championship, but because his mother was a genuine hero, saving lives while he stood safely on a soccer field. For the first time all day, Dylan Martinez felt like the luckiest kid in the world. At 4:23 p.m., exactly 36 minutes after the veterans had arrived at Riverside Middle School, Kim's military tablet erupted with urgent communications from multiple sources. The crowd of parents and students gathered around Dylan had grown to include nearly everyone who remained from the championship celebration, all waiting anxiously for updates on Rebecca's final rescue mission. "This is Fort Braxton Base Operations," came the crackling voice through the tablet speakers. "Captain Martinez has successfully extracted all 11 remaining civilians from the research station. Repeat, all 47 trapped personnel have been rescued alive. Mission accomplished." The crowd exploded into spontaneous cheers and applause, with several parents embracing each other in relief and celebration. Dylan felt his knees go weak as the reality sank in. His mother had not only survived the most dangerous mission of her career, but she had saved every single person who needed rescue. Santos wiped tears from her eyes as she addressed Dylan directly. "Son, your mother just completed the most heroic rescue operation any of us have witnessed in our combined 50 years of military service. She saved 47 lives today, including 8 children who will go home to their families because of her courage." But Kim was holding up his hand for silence, indicating that more communication was coming. "Wait, there's more. Captain Martinez is requesting immediate patch through to Riverside Middle School. She wants to speak directly to her son." The crowd fell silent as Kim adjusted the communication settings on his tablet. Within moments, Rebecca's exhausted but triumphant voice filled the air above the soccer field, transmitted directly from her helicopter cockpit as she flew the final group of rescued civilians to safety. "Dylan, baby, are you there?" Dylan's voice cracked with emotion as he leaned toward the tablet. "Mom, I'm here. Are you okay?" "I'm more than okay, sweetheart. I'm absolutely perfect because everyone is safe. All 47 people are going home to their families tonight because we didn't give up on them." Rebecca's voice was hoarse from 9 hours of shouting rescue commands over hurricane winds, but it carried unmistakable joy and relief. "Dylan," Rebecca continued, "I need you to know that every single time I pulled someone from that flooding building, I was thinking about you. I was thinking about how much I love you and how I couldn't let other children suffer when I had the power to save them. Do you understand?" Through tears, Dylan nodded, even though his mother couldn't see him. I understand, Mom. The veterans from your unit are here and they told me everything. They told me you're a hero. Oh my God, Rebecca's voice caught with emotion. Kim and Santos and Wright are there? They came to find you? Wright stepped forward and spoke directly to the tablet. Captain, we couldn't let your son think you had abandoned him. We drove here from all over the region to make sure Dylan knew what kind of mother he has. You beautiful, crazy idiots, Rebecca laughed through obvious tears. I can't believe you did that. Kim addressed Rebecca with military formality mixed with genuine affection. Ma'am, with all due respect, your son needed to understand that when his mother promises to be somewhere but can't make it, it's because she's literally saving lives. We weren't going to let him think anything less than that. The crowd of parents around Dylan had become completely silent, many of them openly crying as they witnessed this extraordinary reunion between a mother and son separated by duty but connected by unbreakable love. Dylan, Rebecca's voice came through the speakers with renewed strength. I want you to look around at all the people who came to support you today. Those veterans risked everything alongside me in combat zones, and today they drove from all over to make sure you knew the truth about why I couldn't be at your game. Dylan looked around at the circle of military personnel and civilian parents who had rallied around him during the most confusing day of his young life. Coach Peterson was standing nearby with obvious pride, while Carlos and his other teammates had joined the crowd to witness this unprecedented moment. But Mom, Dylan said slowly, I think I understand something now. You weren't absent from my game today. You were showing everyone what kind of person raised me. All these people came here because they respect you so much that they couldn't let your son feel abandoned. The crowd murmured in appreciation of Dylan's mature understanding. Several parents exchanged meaningful glances, recognizing that they had just witnessed a 12-year-old boy demonstrate wisdom beyond his years. Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper when she responded. Dylan Martinez, you are the smartest, most compassionate young man I know. I am so incredibly proud to be your mother. Santos stepped forward and addressed the tablet directly. Captain, you should know that Dylan's entire school community is here listening to this conversation. There are probably 50 people who now understand exactly what military families sacrifice for others. Dylan, Rebecca continued, I'm going to be flying for another hour getting these rescued families to safety, but the moment I land, I'm driving straight to you. I want to hear every detail about your championship game, and I want to meet every person who supported you today. Coach Peterson approached the tablet respectfully. Captain Martinez, this is Coach Peterson. Your son played with incredible heart today, even when he was struggling with your absence. He scored the assist that led to our winning goal, and he never once spoke negatively about you despite obvious disappointment. Coach, thank you for taking care of my boy. Dylan, I need you to know that missing your game today was the hardest choice I've ever made in my life. But now I understand that sometimes the greatest gift a parent can give their child isn't being present. It's showing them what it means to live with purpose and courage. As Rebecca's helicopter flew toward the medical center with the final group of rescued civilians, Dylan Martinez stood surrounded by a community of support he had never expected, finally understanding that his mother's love was so powerful it had created a network of people willing to drop everything to protect him when she couldn't be there herself. 3 hours later, at 7:47 p.m., Rebecca Martinez's dusty pickup truck pulled into the Riverside Middle School parking lot, where a remarkable scene was still unfolding. What had begun as a post-game celebration had transformed into an impromptu community gathering, with parents, students, and veterans sharing stories and food while waiting for Dylan's mother to return from her historic rescue mission. The veterans had organized the waiting families into something resembling a military operation, with Kim coordinating communication updates, Santos managing the growing collection of food donations from local parents, and Wright documenting the entire event with his phone camera to preserve the moment for Dylan's family history. Dylan saw his mother's vehicle approaching and ran across the parking lot with speed that would have impressed his soccer coaches. Rebecca emerged from the truck still wearing her flight suit, her hair matted with sweat and her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had just completed the most challenging mission of her career. But her smile was radiant as she caught Dylan in her arms and lifted him off the ground in a fierce embrace. "I am so sorry I missed your game, baby," Rebecca whispered into Dylan's ear, holding him tightly enough to convince herself he was real and safe. "I am so incredibly sorry." "Mom, stop apologizing." Dylan pulled back to look at her directly. "You didn't miss my game. You made my game mean something completely different. Everyone here knows what you did today, and they know what kind of person raised me." The crowd of families and veterans approached slowly, giving mother and son their moment while simultaneously wanting to witness the reunion they had all invested in emotionally. Rebecca looked around at the gathered community with obvious amazement, recognizing several of the veterans but surprised by the presence of so many civilian families. Santos stepped forward first, snapping to attention despite being in civilian clothes. "Captain Martinez, mission accomplished on multiple fronts. Your son now understands exactly why you couldn't be here, and this entire community understands what military families sacrifice for others." Rebecca shook her head in disbelief. "Santos, I can't believe you all drove here. I can't believe you organized all of this for Dylan." "Ma'am," Wright replied with characteristic military directness, "you saved our lives in Afghanistan. Today we made sure your son knew he has a hero for a mother. It seemed like a fair trade." Coach Peterson approached with obvious respect, extending his hand to Rebecca. "Captain Martinez, I owe you an apology. I spent today thinking you had prioritized work over family, when the reality is that you prioritized saving children over attending a soccer game. There's a significant difference, and I should have understood that." Rebecca shook the coach's hand firmly while keeping her other arm around Dylan's shoulders. "Coach, you couldn't have known the circumstances. Military families deal with this tension constantly. The choice between personal commitments and emergency service. Today was just more dramatic than usual." Mrs. Patterson stepped forward with visible embarrassment, her earlier criticism of Rebecca's parenting choices weighing heavily on her conscience. "Captain Martinez, I said some very unfair things about your parenting priorities earlier today. I had no idea you were literally saving lives. I'm deeply sorry for my judgment." "Mrs. Patterson, you were responding as any parent would when they see a child disappointed by an absent parent. Your concern for Dylan's feelings actually shows what a caring community this is." Jake Morrison and his father approached last, both looking uncomfortable but determined to acknowledge what they had witnessed. Jake's father spoke first, his voice lacking its usual arrogant confidence. "Captain Martinez, I spent today criticizing your absence while you were risking your life for strangers. My son and I both learned something important about real courage and sacrifice." Jake nodded awkwardly, looking directly at Dylan. "Martinez, I'm sorry for all the stuff I said about your mom not caring. I was completely wrong, and I was being a jerk because I was jealous that your mom actually does something important with her life." Dylan looked surprised by Jake's unexpected maturity, then extended his hand for a handshake. "Thanks, Jake. Maybe we can start over in high school." Rebecca looked around at the assembled community with growing emotion. "I need all of you to know that what happened here today, the way you supported my son when I couldn't be here, this is exactly why I serve in the military. I fight to protect communities like this, where people take care of each other's children when parents can't be present. Kim stepped forward with his tablet, which was still receiving mission updates from Fort Braxton. Captain, I'm getting word that all 47 rescued civilians have been safely delivered to medical facilities. 0 casualties, 0 injuries beyond minor hypothermia and exhaustion. Complete mission success. The crowd erupted in applause once again, with several parents wiping away tears as they fully comprehended the magnitude of what Rebecca had accomplished while they were attending a middle school soccer game. Dylan, Rebecca said, pulling her son close again, I want you to know that today changed how I understand my role as both a mother and a soldier. I learned that love isn't just about being physically present. It's about raising a child who understands that real strength comes from serving others, even when it's difficult. Dylan looked up at his mother with newfound maturity. Mom, I learned something too. I learned that when you have to choose between being at my soccer game and saving 8 kids from a hurricane, you should always save the kids. And I learned that if you raised me right, I'll understand that choice and be proud of it instead of angry about it. Rebecca smiled through tears, realizing that her 12-year-old son had just articulated the most important lesson about love, duty, and sacrifice that she had spent her entire military career trying to understand. As the sun set over Riverside Middle School, Dylan Martinez walked toward his mother's truck, surrounded by a community that would never forget the day they learned what real heroism looked like, and what it cost the families of those who choose to serve others above themselves. 6 months later, when Dylan graduated from middle school, Rebecca was in the front row of the auditorium, having requested leave 6 months in advance and arranged for backup pilots to cover any emergency situations. But more importantly, Dylan's speech as class valedictorian focused on the lesson he learned during his soccer championship, that love isn't measured by physical presence, but by the values parents pass on to their children and the communities they build to support each other when duty calls them elsewhere. The speech received a standing ovation, and Rebecca Martinez finally got to be the proudest parent in the audience. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.